Hey everybody, Stinger here. I want to invite you to a pretty cool podcast.
Watch this film. Be quite nice. Have a good time. Be very evil. And you'll love that Danhausen.
Hey, this is Big Sexy Kevin Nash.
Yes, it is I, Big E, but more importantly, it is you.
And you might remember me from such YouTube greats as Being the Elite and Chris Daniels Almost Dies.
And if you're looking for the very best wrestling content, you better come to Good Mic Work Commentaries.
And I'm just going to tell you now, as a role model, you got to tune into this because if you also want to be a role model, you got to learn from the best.
We have a rapport, and we have been so close over so many years. This is not a cameo or a paid endorsement in any regard. This is a message of friendship.
Man, we met 20 years ago, 21 years ago now. Time is flying, isn't it?
I want to wish you all the best in your YouTube channel, and hopefully I can maybe make a special guest appearance on there sometime.
And I used to say, hey, Greg Morgan, and he used to say, please call me Greg, and I wouldn't do it.
Good mic work. Commentaries.
Awesome YouTube channel. Now, if you've seen these videos before, you know what I'm talking about.
We would do verbal chain wrestling. You know, we'd be off in the yard, the schoolyard at recess.
And he's also a 40-year-old wrestling fan. That's a long damn time.
And we'd just be staring at each other, and he'd say, hammerlock. And I'd say, all right, I've reversed the hammerlock into a hammerlock of my own, then I put you in a headlock. And, you know, that would go on for hours.
He's not going to fill your head with bullshit. He's going to tell you real deal, what's up, and that's that.
Raw, SmackDown, NXT. This guy covers it all, my friends. I want you to go to his page, Good Mic Work on YouTube.
Check out Good Mic Work Commentaries on YouTube.
But we would have fun. We would run around. There would be a wooden hoop we would hit with a stick, and it would go down a hill.
I'm about to go and watch a few videos myself.
It's a very practical apparatus.
We're really lacking in the world right now with some people that have a freaking brain cell.
And then now look at him. He has more YouTube views and subscribers than I do, and I'm fine with it because I played such an integral role in his upbringing.
Don't you dare be sour.
We always talked about wrestling. He was a big Lou Thez guy, and of course I had an affectation for the Hackenschmidts.
Clap for Good Mic Work Commentaries.
This is RJ City, a wrestling rock on tour.
And feel the power.
Listen to the podcast. Subscribe.
You are watching Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Just want to encourage all you guys to check out Good Mic Work Commentaries.
And if you don't, we're going to have a problem.
Do it!
Do it.
Do it now!
Thanks a lot for the encomium and the nice words about my father's Hall of Fame induction.
Hope our paths cross again sometime down the road. Would love to shake your hand again, and good luck on this podcast.
And you don't just watch it one time. You can rewatch every single one of them.
And now, Good Mic Work Commentaries and Greg Morgan presents the Winged Eagle Podcast.
Happy Halloween and happy Good Mic Work Commentary Saturday. We are back finally on a Saturday for another Winged Eagle podcast, this time for October 30th, 2021. Halloween is tomorrow, and I know a lot of people really, really like Halloween. I probably know more people in my life who consider Halloween their favorite holiday more than Christmas. It is very popular. Everybody loves it. I wish I was as into it as other people were. Halloween isn't my favorite, but I do still really enjoy this time of year. It's fun. And this weekend, hopefully, will be a blast for all of you. So a little Halloween-themed episode here today to get into, or to discuss just a huge array of topics and some really, really big news. So it should be a fun, casual, laid-back podcast. We've got about an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes to bust this out today, and then I got to head over to work, and it's going to be a pretty fun weekend on the channel as well, because tomorrow night is Halloween night. I ain't got nothing to do. I mean, there's going to be some little fuckers knocking on my door, I'm sure, that want candy. Other than that, I'm just going to be here. So tomorrow night, we are going to be live here on YouTube at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific to do a watch-along of Halloween Havoc 1995. The Yeti coming in and dry humping Hulk Hogan with the Giant. Giant died, came back to life. Kooky, hokey fucking show. We're going to check that out tomorrow. The link is already up on my channel, so please go over there and give it a preemptive like or a preliminary like, and join us tomorrow night for some ghosts and goblins and yetis. It should be fun. But whatever your plans are for tonight, if you're going to any Halloween parties, if you're dressing up, anything like that, I hope you have a blast. If you are dressing up as a wrestler for any reason, tag me in it on Twitter and show me what you got. Should be cool. So I hope you guys have a great weekend. Hope you're having a great weekend. And we're going to get into what we're going to discuss today here in just a second. But I want to jump over to the chat real quick and say hello to everybody that is here. I did add a bunch more mods recently, so it's good to see you guys in here. Divine Ricks is here right off the bat with $5. I can see a heel team of Kingston and Moxley versus Punk and Danielson in the near future. By the way, I really enjoy your Dynamite watch-along. It was awesome. We're going to talk a lot about Dynamite here in a little bit. Last Wednesday was fun to get those Dynamites back on Wednesday as well. Heel team of Kingston and Moxley, I do like it. You feel like Moxley is headed down that road. Kingston is as well. Little run-in with Punk last night on Rampage, and since we've already seen Kingston and Moxley have their feud, it would be pointless to have just one of them go heel and then feud with each other again, so they might as well both go heel together and remain a unit. I would love that, especially if they took on Punk and Danielson in the near future. Wow. And so that could be set up too, because if you noticed, one of my favorite parts of Dynamite this past Wednesday was when Moxley just annihilated poor 10 of the Dark Order and then just left in a complete squash. So we're going to be setting up here probably Mox and Danielson in the finals of that Eliminator. So that could spawn Punk and that tag team match you're talking about, especially if Kingston comes in and tries to interfere on Moxley's behalf during that Danielson match. You could have CM Punk come out to help out, and you could have Punk and Danielson on one side and Moxley and Kingston on the other. Wow, I wish I could whistle. I can't. But holy shit, that would be some awesome stuff. I like it, Divine. I like it a lot. Good to see little Justin Lowe. Jet the Hawk. Ben is in the house. Devlin, husband, and How Wheezy. Good to see both of you guys here. David Brown is back. Nice. Angie, what's going on? I'm in Hawaii touring Pearl Harbor. Catch you soon. That's awesome. I've been there. I was there just 3 years ago and did the whole Pearl Harbor tour. They were doing some maintenance, so not all of it was available. But I have been there. It's awesome. Have a blast. Hit up Devlin. I think that's the same island. Isn't it, Devlin? I'm not sure. Anyway, Sonic Plays, good to see as well. Chris Miner in the house. Got a new grill for your birthday. Right on. Grills are awesome. I grill every day. I got 2 grills. Dreadhead Dre is here. Knox is in the house. King Doe and Mr. T. What's up, everybody? I'm going to get into what we're going to discuss here in just a second. I mentioned tomorrow night's Halloween Havoc 1995 review. We will be up here on Monday. I thought about taking this Monday Night Raw review off because Raws just suck. Last week, we did not have a very good audience in the chat, and I'm not going to bother myself with a 3-hour boring-ass show if I don't have to. But they got a big title match scheduled for Monday night. Becky versus Bianca Belair, and I got a feeling Bianca might win. So I'm going to offer my prediction for that here in a little bit, but I am going to come up, since it is kind of a big title match, we're going to have something to talk about. So Monday night we will be here again for the Raw review. So 3 straight days of streaming here on the channel. Should be a fun weekend. Let me cruise over here to the Patreon page over at the Relationship Manager and thank all my patrons. I'd like to welcome Kaylin Scott as a new Patreon supporter. Jordan Henriker is pretty new as well. Divine Ricks, JJ Legg, Nikita Apalakin, Chris Miner, Super Fluffy Toaster, Deshaun Robinson, Jay Smoove, 99, Martin Can, Alex Dredge, Apron Bump Podcast, Alan Carter, Nick Musser, Jimmy Anderson, K-Dogs Kennel, Ryan Y, Devlin Husband, John Redifer, Claudio Clavedetcher, Daniel Rodriguez, Barry MK, Josiah, Scott Moss, Domanian, Ewell, John Riffle, Michael Kumo, Naveed, Keith Salyers, and Blake Moran. As always, dudes, thanks a lot. I updated the secondary shoutouts in the description below, so if you do pledge $10 or more per month or $200 or more lifetime, you got an extra shoutout downstairs in the description, along with all of our links, social media, shit like that. Check it out. All the good stuff is there. In terms of what we're going to talk about today, here's what's on the menu. We'll probably open up with some wrestling news. I'm going to talk about the big news that dropped earlier this week on Wednesday regarding Ring of Honor. Ring of Honor is basically, at least temporarily, folding. They're going to run, I think, one more show. They've released everybody. They're claiming a relaunch or a rebranding in 2022. We'll see how that goes, so we'll talk about that entire situation. We'll also talk about the latest on Bray Wyatt. He is officially free to appear anywhere. No compete is done. He's ready to rock. There's been some rumors. There's been some photos. There's been some discussion, and Bray Wyatt has been pretty, or I should call him Wyndham now, has been pretty active on Twitter, even as recent as just a couple of hours ago. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about Goldberg's comments on his Crown Jewel match, which I found hilarious. We'll talk about that later on. Oh, man, and a pass the lotion moment. We got Cesaro and Walter advertised for the UK tour for a number of cities over there soon, so that's pretty good. We've got some WWE and AEW ticket news. We're going to talk about AEW and WWE Halloween-themed matches and how those matched up against each other this week. Also, WWE released its pay-per-view schedule for 2022, which is interesting and has a lot of Saturday dates on there and some gaps, allowing obviously what will probably be a Crown Jewel show. So that is kind of interesting. And we're going to do a full review of Thursday night's Dark Side of the Ring Season 3 finale on the Steroid Trials. My God, that was some crazy shit. I was ready to see this one. I'm going to give you a full review of it, even though I'd say 80% of what was discussed in the documentary is stuff that if you know about the steroid trial and know the history of it, we already knew this, but it was still just really interesting. I've never seen Jerry McDevitt this much before. So he was clearly the star of that episode. So we're going to get into a full review of that and give you all my thoughts on it, because I remember that entire time period very, very well. We'll also touch on the ratings for all the shows this week. Like I said, I want to talk about Becky and Bianca just a little bit for this coming Monday night's Raw. And last week on Tuesday, NXT ran the Halloween Havoc show. 3 big title matches took place there. We'll talk about that briefly. We'll touch on Dynamite this past week, talk about their rating and a couple of and some of the fallout involving a couple of the matches from that show as well. Here's what I'm not going to talk about. Last night's SmackDown on FS1. Every single person that I saw on social media discussing the show said it was skippable, didn't offer you too much, it kind of sucked. I caught a couple of things. I saw the Shotzi stuff and Kofi getting knighted, and I saw the Brock fine. But we ain't talking about SmackDown. It seemed like a complete waste of time, so we will just briefly touch on it, but no review, no match-by-match stuff. We're not even going to get into it. And Rampage, however, last night was half the time shorter, half the length of SmackDown, but twice as good. 3 really fun matches, especially the opener and the main event. And Rampage was a hit last night. SmackDown, not so much, but it was on FS1. No Roman. Whatever. I'm sure they will bounce back to their 2 million plus rating next week when they're back on Fox, or whenever that is. Might have to wait till after the World Series. I'm not sure. So anyway, that is the order of stuff that we're going to get into today. So I'm going to scroll all the way back up to the top of my notes and start with the news on the Ring of Honor releases here in just a second. I'm going to close out my Patreon. I got that taken care of. Cruise back to the chat. We are good. Good to see Ben in here as well. Not sure if I got you earlier. And Sam Devlin Husband is here with $5, man. Putting this out there to pop out, but we need to get some of the viewers to get on the Jericho Cruise in March. I know the Jericho Cruise, I figured was going to be not in the cards for me. If there was a business or YouTube reason to go, I could maybe swing it, or whatever. So we will see. But yeah, if we want to get a big group going or something like that, maybe that's a possibility. But man, the timing is weird. It's right around WrestleMania. I want to go to Double or Nothing in Vegas in May, and then I got a Hawaii trip coming up in July that will actually, I think, overlap Money in the Bank. So I'm not even going to be here to see Money in the Bank, which kind of sucks. So I got a big 2022 already in the works for myself. But if we can do it, we will try. Sam, not sure if I got you either. JCS 186, good to see you. And Gilbert Arbalo is here. If you guys could please do me a favor. Likes have never been more important than they are now on the channel since everything sucks real bad. So if you can get those likes up for me, I would definitely appreciate it, and it would help. So thank you. And if you're not subscribed, please do. And we're going to get into the news here. But not before I knock out Isaac Roa's $5 super chat. Thank you so much, dude. If WWE were to add a pay-per-view in between Rumble and Mania, which would you prefer, Saudi Arabia or Elimination Chamber? I'd prefer neither, but if I had to pick one, Elimination Chamber. I hate the Elimination Chamber, but I hate Saudi Arabia worse. But it's not a matter of if. I think Saudi Arabia is going to be the February or March show next year. That's too big of a gap between Rumble and Mania. It's the way it should be. You should have a big gap between Rumble and Mania, but with the Saudi shows now, kind of them under contract to do those, it's going to have to be there. So I think that's definitely going to be between Rumble and Mania. So no Elimination Chamber, hopefully. Hopefully they're just doing away with it completely because it is not on the pay-per-view listing that we have. There is no Elimination Chamber listed, although there are a couple of pay-per-view to be determined, I believe, as well. Like they haven't named the pay-per-view. It just says pay-per-view. So I suppose they could move the chamber to another time of year, but why? It's usually used to determine WrestleMania title shots and shit. So I hate the chamber. I never want to see it again. JCS 186, thanks for the $2. SmackDown without Roman Reigns equals trash. Yeah, kind of got proven last night, huh? Steven Scott, thank you for the $5. Hey, good mic work. How you doing? What about a Dark Side of the Ring on the scissors incident with Sid and Arn and Renegade? Renegade could possibly be one, although I don't know if he was really that big enough star. Sure, a sad story. If there's a lot more to his life than we didn't know, it could maybe fill an episode. But the Arn Sid thing was also like an isolated incident. It was one time. There's not a whole lifetime of history of bad blood. One of these guys didn't fuck the other one's wife or anything like that. It was just a drunk argument in a bar that led to a bloody fight. I don't know if you could fill an hour, maybe, just to tell the story. I mean, they filled a whole hour for the plane ride from hell, so why can't you do the scissor fight? But in terms of the lasting implications that it had on the business, it really didn't. Arn and Sid somehow both survived this and were able to work together again in the future. So just don't know. Interesting subject. It's something we can definitely talk about here on the podcast, and I love to hear about, but an entire hour-long documentary, I don't know. Something tells me no. Yeah, Trey, I hate the Elimination Chamber. It's fucking ridiculous. The thing looks like a spaceship. It's so over the top. It's just, hate it. But I'm old school, though. Younger generations probably see no problem at all with something like the Elimination Chamber. Old school fan like myself is like, what the fuck, pods? Are you kidding me? It lights up? What the hell's going on? I just don't like it. It's just too much. It's too much. It's too over the top. And that thing is a monstrosity and an abomination. I am very, very, very anti-Elimination Chamber. Even worse than Hell in the Cell, because I don't like Hell in the Cell either. Anyway. So, news time. Let's get into news. We got a lot of it to get into. I think we're going to start with the Ring of Honor stuff. Very sad news to report this week with Ring of Honor. They released a statement on Wednesday stating that they will be going on a hiatus with the exception of, I believe, the final battle on December 11th. So any contracts that were expiring at the end of the year will not be renewed, and any contracts that extended beyond the end of the year, those wrestlers, I believe, will be paid through March. And in the statement, Ring of Honor is claiming that they are going to debut a new reimagined Ring of Honor in the beginning of 2022, specifically April. And it immediately made me think of NXT 2.0, how they're just going to completely change their vision and stuff. And a lot of people are questioning and skeptical as to whether or not this is even going to take place. If this is just something they're saying now, to maybe hold out hope that the company isn't going to completely, have to go under and will never return again. But a lot of people believe this could be the actual true end of Ring of Honor. Now, I am not as knowledgeable as most in terms of Ring of Honor and Sinclair and who owns what and why they can't get better funding and TVs and things like that. I do know they missed, an opportunity a few years ago when Tony Khan and AEW jumped in to become, a major competitor to WWE. But Ring of Honor has got a ton of history, and they really helped, the reputation of independent wrestling, and they helped supply wrestling with its current biggest stars that we see in the business, really, maybe outside of, the Roman Reigns and shit. So many of who we see now featured on TV so heavily all got their start, and worked in Ring of Honor, and it's very, very sad. So a lot of people are skeptical as to whether or not this is going to happen. Even though Ring of Honor has been largely rated, there is still some really good talent there, all of which I think will have no trouble finding work on the independent level and stuff. But, when it comes to actually a secure job and having a contract and stuff, it's always sad, when that happens. So AEW hopefully can pick up, a lot of the, the bigger names or the top talent there, maybe even potentially buy the company altogether. I don't know. Who knows what the future holds there, if they're going to get any extra funding, or if this new reimagined Ring of Honor actually really happens next year in 2022. We don't know. Sad to hear that, though, because Ring of Honor has, been around for a lot of years now and has developed quite the reputation for itself, even during its ups and downs. And you can kind of see now, it's not nearly as strong as it used to be, but it still has its following. And friend of the channel, Wrestling with Regret, Brian Zane, has been doing work for them, past year or so, or maybe even longer. So, I know he doesn't know what his future holds with them, but luckily for him, he's doing fine with the YouTube stuff. And a lot of these wrestlers will fall back on other work, but it still doesn't make this any less sad or tragic, and you really feel and wish everybody there the best. So that's all we want to do is on this channel is just wish everybody there the best. Hopefully they can all continue on with their pro wrestling careers, even if it is outside Ring of Honor, and hopefully we will see a new Ring of Honor debut next year. It might be kind of cool for them just to kind of hit a reset button and and try something different. Why not? Now, an interesting little tidbit in this whole story sorry, I just breathed in a little flake or a little dust particle or something, is that apparently the Ring of Honor tape library is for sale, and apparently it has been for sale for quite some time. Now, this is only the Sinclair-owned library, so this will be everything from 2012 through present day, but this will also include the All In pay-per-view that was done a couple years ago right before AEW started. Now, everything prior to Sinclair, that's owned by somebody else. I don't know who, but the 2012, for the last 10 years of the tape library, is apparently available to the highest bidder. Now, I think at one time, WWE would probably want to pick this library up. It seems like they were picking up every tape library that they could. They were even outwardly trying to own independent wrestling. They went and did that and struck deals with everybody in the UK, and it looked like they were kind of heading down that path here until their direction changed a bit. Now it doesn't seem like this tape library would be all that valuable to them. It might be more valuable to AEW, because with this tape library, you're going to be getting like the Young Bucks and Cody and Kenny Omega, but everything prior to that was when CM Punk was there, when Danielson was there, when Samoa Joe was there. So I'm not sure if it would be worth it for AEW to get a lot of that old footage for some people, but not everybody. It would be great if they could get it all. Where you look on WWE's side, I mean, who do they really have there in the company that, that they could really use this footage for, other than to buy it to keep it away from AEW, which they might do. So, this actually might bump the price of this library up, because AEW might say, you know what, we could use that. We could definitely use that stuff. We need to start building our tape library. WWE owns everything. We got to start somewhere. So why don't we start acquiring tape libraries that are out there? This would be a good one. WWE could think of that and say, we constantly want to just fuck with AEW, so we'll make an offer on the tape library, even though we don't want it, just so AEW has to pay more to get it. I could totally see them doing that. So we'll see where the tape library ends up and what the future of Ring of Honor is. But whatever happens, we just wish everybody there the best, and kind of a bummer of a story to drop this week. Some interesting stuff, though, and some interesting speculation regarding Bray Wyatt. Excuse me, I can't talk today on this weekend. He is basically officially allowed legally to turn up anywhere. His no-compete clause is over. Wednesday night, during the Dynamite watch-along, when we were up here live, I saw him tweet out 2 more days, which meant that was Friday. So that was yesterday, I guess. So he is officially free. No-compete clause is up. The WWE Bray Wyatt Twitter handle has now been changed to Wyndham6. So I guess he couldn't get the only Wyndham. He had to be Wyndham6. And He was recently spotted in Hollywood a couple days ago. A photo surfaced of him on some Warner Brothers lot with a guy named Jason Baker, who was the guy that designed and helped design the Fiend mask and the lantern for Bray Wyatt's Fiend character in WWE. So there is now some talk, since he was spotted in Hollywood with this guy, that he could be doing some sort of a movie project. There was talk of Bray Wyatt doing film projects prior to his release. He seems to be, very creatively tuned into this type of stuff. He seems to really enjoy, this gimmick and stuff. And so whatever he's doing with this Jason Baker could either be something movie related, or it could be that putting something together for his wrestling return. Because what's cool about Bray Wyatt, a lot like Malachi Black in a way, but I think even better, is Wyatt is going to be one of the guys that's going to have the easiest and smoothest transition into another company and another gimmick change. WWE pretty much owns everything Bray Wyatt related, with that monster and the Fiend and stuff, but he can still create another monster version of himself and be like reborn under a different name, and it really wouldn't mean much. I mean, look at what Malachi Black is doing. He is still having callbacks. His whole persona in AEW, it's not a brand new character and brand new universe. He's acknowledging his WWE past. He's still selling the eye thing from that hokey shit they did a couple of years ago. Mysterio and Seth Rollins are walking around fine, but Malachi, takes it seriously. So the Fiend, the way he left WWE and everything going on there with him, and when he was burned and came back to life and everything, he can simply do that somewhere else. So, what would you guys rather see from Bray Wyatt? Let's just say hypothetically, because he could go anywhere. Apparently it will not be Impact. Was some talk to him going there. I am so glad he did not go there. If he does hypothetically come back to wrestling and this movie shit doesn't happen or whatever, and he's coming back and he goes to AEW, like, what would you prefer from Bray Wyatt? Would you prefer a character more like what the Fiend was? Maybe like another melted, distorted looking crazy mask, kind of like his profile picture currently is on Twitter, something like that, like a burned, demon, coming back from the WWE dead in AEW? Or would you prefer him be something more like he was when he originally started the Wyatt family, just cutting his great promos and just doing his thing? I'd almost prefer like the original Wyatt family Bray Wyatt, who I think was my favorite rendition of all of them, even more than the monster, demon, magical Fiend. So that's kind of what I'd prefer. But the cool thing with Wyndham is this guy could potentially do anything, and you don't really know. Sounds like he's got some, interest from a lot of different areas, wrestling promotions and people in the entertainment world. So in terms of this guy, having a fulfilling life and a great career, that's going to happen with or without WWE. So that makes me happy. Now, a couple of hours ago, he did respond to a PW Insider article that was talking about his release from WWE and some opinions from internally in WWE, how they feel about his release. And he responded to it with that eye-rolling gif of The Rock when he's doing the promo. He's like, "Oh, brother." And then he says, "Now that we've seen or heard what Johnny and Bruce have to say, I want to tell my side," or something like that. So apparently, he might, come out with his side of the story on this thing. I'm sure he's got some pretty interesting things to say. So we'll keep an eye on it. Bray Wyatt technically could appear on Dynamite on Wednesday if he wanted to. So we'll see if he winds up turning up or if he's out of wrestling for a bit longer while he works on other projects. At this point, we don't know, but it will be fun finding out. That's for sure. Yeah, cult leader Bray Wyatt, Casey, I think would be quite awesome. And, we talked about the Dark Order stuff too. A lot of people feel, including people inside the Dark Order, that they don't want another leader, that Brody Lee is irreplaceable. I agree. However, if you were ever going to make an exception, I think that Bray Wyatt is probably the best possible guy to not take over, not fill the shoes, but just be, a new leading presence in the Dark Order because of his really deep history with Brody Lee and how far their relationship goes back, and that could be played into and tied into in that whole situation. So, if Wyatt was going to do the cult leader thing, I could see him coming into Dark Order, but, Dark Order is also a lot of comedy. And one thing I don't think we did see from Bray Wyatt too much, aside from the Funhouse, was a lot of comedy. So, well, I guess the Funhouse match he had with John Cena was spectacular. So, yeah, Bray can do comedy. He'd have to maybe change a bit. Would you like to see that from Bray Wyatt? Where he would become maybe a little bit more like Brody Lee, or maybe a cross between the cult leader Bray Wyatt and what you saw in the Funhouse. You know, kind of weird. He can have fun, and who knows if Funhouse Bray Wyatt and John Silver were on screen together, that's money. So I think that, you know, Bray Wyatt's versatile, and I think he could potentially play a lot of different roles. He could play cult leader, he could play monster, he can play funny guy. What range that Bray Wyatt has. So we will see where he turns up. Can't wait until we see him somewhere. I don't think, Trey, he will be Husky Harris. No, don't think that's a possibility. What's up, Salvador? Nobody from Chicago. I'm not from Chicago. This is California. Anyway, I want to talk about this real briefly, too. This is hilarious. So Goldberg was a guest on the CarCast podcast, and he discussed a number of things, including his match with Bobby Lashley at Crown Jewel. And I'm just going to quote one paragraph here that what he said, because I found it to be really funny. Basically talking about his performance, and we can all agree, we said so on the review, that it was not as bad as it could have been. It was actually pretty good for Goldberg standards. I was terrified of this match. I just didn't want anybody to die, and I also didn't want to watch the match because I knew Goldberg was going to win, and I fucking hated that because you spent the last year or so building Bobby Lashley up as to one of your top title contenders, only to have him lose to this 50-plus-year-old legend for no reason. It doesn't do anything for Goldberg to have him win matches like this, and it kind of undoes some of what you do, and I just don't understand the need to have Goldberg there at fucking all. So I was already bitter and just pissy about this match in general because I knew what the outcome was going to be, but Goldberg surprised me in the sense that, number one, like I'll always say, for a guy his age, I don't even understand how it's physically possible for somebody to look like that. It's incredible, you know, but physically, in terms of what he can do athletically in the ring, he wasn't good in his prime, much less when he's 55 years old, knocking himself out on the ring post and dropping the Undertaker on his head, you know, and beating the Fiend in a ridiculously boring, horrible match for the title. Every time he shows up in Saudi Arabia, it's a complete and total utter disaster. So the fact that this wasn't one, I was like, okay, great. Goldberg didn't embarrass himself in Saudi Arabia. But Goldberg says in this interview, and I quote, "I don't have the best track record in Saudi. I've knocked myself out and dropped Undertaker on his head. I'm not happy with my performance, but I'm satisfied with it to a point where I think it shut all these fuckers up." No, it didn't. This is what I found so funny about this quote is he basically says, I'm not happy with my performance, but I'm satisfied to a point where I think it will shut these fuckers up. So basically, I still suck, but I think I did good enough to where it'll keep the fans off my back. Do you hear how that sounds? That sounds like you're just admitting that you got no business being in the ring at this age. I don't think the match was bad, but I certainly don't think the match was good at all. It was just good for Goldberg. And back when he came back the first time, I didn't mind when he squashed Brock at the Survivor Series. I kind of thought that was cool. His run, I credited WWE and him both for not overstaying their welcome. There was plenty of fans pissed about Kevin Owens losing the title. I wasn't thrilled about it, but I knew what it meant. I knew if you traced everything back to Survivor Series, I'm like, the reason Brock is beating Owens for the title, or I'm sorry, Goldberg is beating Owens for the title, is so Brock can beat Goldberg for it. That means Goldberg's going to have a month-long run. He's going to have a run 1/6 as long as Kevin Owens' run, because Owens held it since around the SummerSlam point. And who cares? It's one quick little nostalgia run. 1 month, he puts over Brock, who just got done putting him over at Survivor Series and even got tossed out by by Goldberg in the Rumble, I believe. So, and now Lesnar wins the belt back. I was actually fine with that. And then it happened, and it played out that way. And the next night on Raw, after Goldberg loses the title, kind of gives a little goodbye speech, brings his kid in the ring. And I'm like, you know what? That was such the perfect amount of Goldberg. The dude comes back super old, but looks great. Winds up having quick, short, straight-to-the-point matches where he doesn't expose himself and doesn't embarrass himself, and he brought Goldberg back and tied the Goldberg career up with a nice red bow and rectified some of the heat and problems and animosity and controversy he had with WWE the first time he was there, because that whole year-long run he had in 03 and 04 was a disaster. So him coming back now, making amends, making good with Vince, coming back, beating Brock, winning the title, putting Brock over at WrestleMania, losing the title. That was all I ever needed to see out of Bill Goldberg. I became a Goldberg fan when that happened. I never liked him, but the way that whole situation went, aside from the Kevin Owens match, which was not my favorite, aside from that, everything else in the Goldberg run didn't bother me at all. I actually thought it was nice. I thought it was a nice send-off for a guy that was a huge part of the Monday Night Wars and the war between WWE and WCW. He's a big part of history and really one of the only megastars WCW ever made outside of Sting. So when that all happened, it was perfect. But when he came back and then came back again and then fucked up shit started happening, he was beating the Fiend in Saudi Arabia. He damn near killed The Undertaker. Every time he was out there, it was just this discombobulated mess until they had to throw Ziggler in front of him. Here, go out there and work with somebody that will make you look good. And, so you can stop embarrassing yourself. And it's not totally Goldberg's fault if WWE's going to offer all this money for him to come wrestle 2 matches a year. You can't fault him for taking it. But as a fan, it just drives me crazy because it's so unneeded. I don't need it. I don't need him. So, I really like to see legacies end on positive notes. I like to see legacies end in a way where the wrestler can ride off into the sunset knowing he can be proud of his career. And Goldberg did that in 2017. But he's ruined everything, since then with his performances and stuff. And I just think it's funny that he can go out there and have a shitty performance but still think that it's not as shitty as I usually do, so the fans will probably stay off my back. That's not how it works, Bill. So, yes, you did very well in the match with Lashley. It's just a match I would have rather not have happened at all because it doesn't need to happen. So I found that to be funny. Goldberg, Billy, you are silly. That's all I can say. How awesome is the Cesaro and Walter tour of matches announced? 4 matches advertised for the UK tour, all of them in England. Liverpool, Leeds, Nottingham, and Manchester all get to see Cesaro versus Walter. Awesome. Friends across the pond, if you go to any of these shows and get pictures or video of these matches, send them over to me on Twitter. I would love to check that out. Before we get into a couple of other news tidbits and we talk about the WWE pay-per-view schedule, let me say hello to Salvador Arugian. I'm probably saying that terribly wrong. I'm sorry, man. Thank you for the $5. When do you think AEW will beat WWE in the ratings? Can't wait till they're erased from real wrestling history. Signed, a WCW and TNA superfan. Well, WWE's never going to be erased from real wrestling history. They are real wrestling history, even if you don't like it. I don't know. AEW actually beating WWE in the ratings, I think that's a ways off. AEW, when they have a really good Dynamite, it's very close to a very good Dynamite rating is very close to a very bad Raw rating. They are only a couple of 100,000 viewers apart. So it's not out of the question to think one day AEW could draw higher than Raw. I think that's possible, but I also think stuff like that takes time, and as long as they can compete ratings-wise, that's all AEW really needs to worry about, and they are competing. They're getting 50%, 60%, 70%, and in some cases even more than that of what WWE gets in the ratings, and they should, be happy with that and allow themselves just to grow at their pace and not worry too much about it. But in terms of them beating WWE and WWE going away, that's a short-sighted line of thinking, and that's virtually impossible. And plus, we don't want that, because if AEW puts WWE out of business, which will not happen, if that happens, that just means AEW turns into WWE. And then we got another monopoly, which is not good. So for fans who want to take a side and they want to root for the other one's failure, you're dumb, because if you do that, we're going to be stuck right back in the same situation we've been in for 20 years. So just watch them both, try to enjoy them both, and hope they both push each other to do better. That's what we should all be hoping for in terms of that. Alex Crawford is here. Good to see you. Transferring Heat podcast is back as well. Vince McJoke, good to see you. Ratnick, hello. What's up, guys? Let me continue on with my notes. Do me a favor, too. Please smash that thumbs up button. Could really use the likes. My God. Lowest likes this channel has ever had in the last, probably 6 months. So please help me out and hit me with the likes. I'd appreciate it. We've got some interesting news about WWE being outsold by AEW at the UBS Arena in Long Island. They are running shows, I think, late November, early December, I think just a week apart. And so far, AEW is doubling WWE's ticket sales to the point where now WWE is offering buy one, get one deals to try to pad their show. So it is funny how WWE still dominates the ratings in the mainstream, but when it comes to going to a live event, I think most fans unanimously pick AEW over WWE because you're going to get a really fun experience there. I'm still yet to go to a real AEW arena show. I was on the Jericho Cruise in 2020, And I saw a title change there, but not like a real show. And I'm ready to actually go to that. Hopefully Double or Nothing in May. If it does wind up in Vegas, I'll be there. But they, when you look at the shows, even on TV, WWE is just still it's extremely formulaic. They've been at this forever. We're very accustomed to seeing what WWE gives us. Last night's SmackDown was a perfect example of that. Could you imagine paying a ticket and going to watch that show that's just full of nothing at all, no substance, nothing to bite into, and enjoy. It's just, where AEW, you're having fun, man. They're giving you different shit, on each show that you don't get on the show before, and it's not stock filled with rematches and predictable, just rehashed nonsense over and over. And I can understand why their ticket sales are better, because if I'm ever faced, at least right now, that could change in the future. 5 years down the line, AEW could shit the bed, and WWE, finds a new direction to go with, where they've got a stranglehold on the wrestling business again. That could totally happen. But at least for right now, tomorrow, if somebody offers me a choice to go to a live WWE event or a live AEW event, it's not even close to which one I'm picking. Now, like I said, that could change. I was at SummerSlam. That was very fun, but still, it looks like it's a very fun time at an AEW show. Everybody that I've seen has a blast. Those of you who go, let me know on Twitter or let me know on the podcast. Went to Dynamite last night. It was fucking awesome. I want to go. So I just think that that's great that they are not only outselling WWE, but beating the shit out of them, to where WWE's now got to offer deals to get people to come out. So basically the people in that market probably aren't going to go to both. Maybe some are, but they're choosing. I'm either going to go to the AEW show or the WWE show, and they're picking AEW. So you'll see fluctuations, volatility in the ratings, ups and downs like we saw here. AEW's down a bit, but here, they're also doing great attendance numbers and stuff, and they're outselling WWE just about everywhere. We've seen how terrible the Raw and SmackDown crowds look when they're running these huge arenas and they're literally filling 10% of it. Yikes. So anyway, I'll be interested to see those two shows in Long Island. That'll be fun. Let's run. Yeah, I know. Why doesn't AEW run the West Coast? I think they're about to. Yeah, right. Alex Crawford, I thought the same thing when I read that. I'm like, it's like WCW. WWE used to make fun of WCW for papering their events. Remember, I was there. I was at the Raw when they went and invaded Nitro and Norfolk, and they were showing the sign on the outside the arena saying free admission and shit. Oh, that's funny. So now WWE, just because they don't want to lose face too much, I mean, they're obvious it's going to be really hard for them to turn this around now and outsell AEW. So I don't think they're going to overtake this lead or anything, but they're trying to cut into it to where it's not quite as an embarrassing loss there. Because right now AEW is doubling what WWE is sold, and double is a lot. So we'll see what happens there. Salvador, your opinion on Nia beating up the Queen? Back in the good old days, she would get her legs broke. Who, Nia or the Queen? I don't know. Don't call her that, man. That's not nice. Yeah, I don't know. This isn't the old days, man. Anyway, let's get into this WWE pay-per-view schedule for 2022. We touched on this a little bit either on Monday or Wednesday, whenever this was brought up, but we haven't really talked about it. So let's look at it here. Here's what WWE has released for next year. Of course, Saturday, January 1st, day one at State Farm Arena in Atlanta, so that will be the pay-per-view there. Then on the 29th of January, we have Royal Rumble at the Dome at America's Center in St. Louis, followed by WrestleMania, April 2nd and April 3rd, two-day event, AT&T Stadium in Dallas. Sunday, May 8th, pay-per-view at Dunkin' Donuts Center in Providence. So that'll be Sunday, so that'll either be like a backlash or a payback or something stupid like that, or maybe an Elimination Chamber. I hope not. That'll be in Providence. Then we go Sunday again, 2 Sundays in a row there after WrestleMania, May and June. This one is June 5th. Pay-per-view in Chicago, All-State Arena. That's not going to be Money in the Bank. Money in the Bank's the next month. So what is going to be in the All-State Arena? It's probably going to be it's going to be Stomping Grounds, or it's going to be something really dumb. Can't wait. Then we've got Saturday, July 2nd, Money in the Bank at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. I was just at that arena for SummerSlam. It's a beautiful facility. They announced Money in the Bank when we were there. However, I got to double check my calendar, but I'm 99% sure I will be in Hawaii during Money in the Bank. So no review that night unless I do one from the beach. Then, very interesting, 2 firsts this year for SummerSlam. Number one, SummerSlam is a Saturday. Or was it a Saturday last year too? Shit, it might have been. So maybe it's only 1 first. Saturday, July 30th, not August, July, which is going to feel weird, SummerSlam in July. Honestly, that kind of feels like where it belongs. It feels like, SummerSlam should be like in the middle of the summer. When I was a kid or when I was like a teenager, I always associated with SummerSlam with having to go back to school, which kind of sucked. SummerSlam should be more of a party. As a matter of fact, I've told the story before. I remember staying up, I guess not late for a kid, but late when I was 13 years old, watching SummerSlam 1990. That was Hogan and Earthquake, one of my favorite SummerSlams of all time. And the Hearts won the tag titles, and you had Warrior and Rick Rude in a cage in the main event. That pay-per-view aired the night before I had to start school. So I was staying up late to watch it, and I was very happy. I was enjoying the pay-per-view, but I was also kind of bummed because I had to get up at 8 o'clock, or no, earlier than that, 7, whatever the fuck kids get up, super early on that Monday and go to school and start my whole brand new school year, and I was not looking forward to that because I loved summers as a kid. So I think if I was a kid, I would prefer SummerSlam being in the middle of the summer rather than the end or the tail end, but as an adult, I don't care. This year, it's Saturday, July 30th, Nissan Stadium in Nashville. So that means we've got 2 stadium shows in a row in the same month. Money in the Bank in Vegas, SummerSlam in Nashville. We also have the Rumble in St. Louis, which will be in a dome, and WrestleMania in Dallas. So that's 5 actually, since the WrestleMania is 2 days. That's 5 dome shows this year. It's fucking nuts, man. Then we skip all of August, no pay-per-view at all in August, and we skip to Saturday, September 3rd or September 4th. That might be Labor Day weekend. Oh, it is Labor Day weekend, and that says pay-per-view at location to be determined. So this is WWE trying to get a head start or a one-up on AEW because AEW usually runs all out Labor Day weekend on Saturdays. So WWE here doesn't even look like they know which day they want to do yet. So I think maybe these 2 companies are going to wait and see what the other does. It's such a different time now. I can't imagine 2 pay-per-views going head-to-head. Even when WCW and WWE were in the thick of their war, they never would have gone head-to-head pay-per-view-wise. I don't think they would have been able to. The pay-per-view companies probably wouldn't have allowed it or something. But now, the way everything's different, how much pay-per-view revenue does WWE really bring in? Do people still go on their TVs and pay $50 for this shit when they can just get Peacock? And in terms of AEW, all their shit's on Fight or whatever, so they won't directly be competing with WWE. The fans are just going to have to choose which show they want to watch. So doing competing pay-per-views could, I believe, theoretically happen. There should be nothing stopping either company from doing it in terms of, an outsider stopping them. But, Peacock might not, and Fight or whoever, they might not want that to happen either. They might not want the audience divided because they want to maximize, buys and views and shit like that. So it will be interesting to see if AEW keeps all out on that weekend. If WWE runs their pay-per-view Saturday, then AEW will run all out on Sunday, or maybe vice versa. Or AEW might move the pay-per-view to the weekend after or something like that. We'll see. But September next year, it's still a whole year away, but it's going to be interesting to see what the companies do, when it comes to that stuff. And then after that, we've got Saturday, November 26th, Survivor Series at TD Garden in Boston with no December pay-per-view again. Now, there's a whole year to go. They could easily add one. Easily. There's also no October pay-per-view, so that will be likely where Crown Jewel goes. So we will get a Crown Jewel in February between Rumble and Mania, and a Crown Jewel in November is what we're going to get there. So, in October. prior to Survivor Series in November, and then hopefully nothing again for all of December. That would be nice. So anyway, that is the pay-per-view scheduled for next year. It will be interesting to see a July SummerSlam and what the hell AEW is going to do on Labor Day weekend now. Before we just briefly touch on some of the results and stuff. Actually, let's just do that now because there's not a ton of stuff to get into. I just want to briefly mention some of the wrestling stuff, and I think we're then going to close with the steroid trial and end with that because in terms of the wrestling results and stuff I want to talk about, it's very minor and very minimal. I want to talk about Raw briefly. Raw this past week was not a good show. 1.66 million was the rating there. They have advertised a huge title match for this week. Becky Lynch defending against Bianca Belair. Now, normally you would see a match like that and say, oh, that's just going to be a disqualification. But with everything going on, with Becky Lynch and Charlotte and that whole debacle belt swap nonsense that took place last week and all of the controversy that has followed and all of the heat that Charlotte has in this really weird situation, and now Becky and Charlotte, heading for a collision course for Survivor Series, but we don't know internally if that's something they're going to do or whatever. So I had mentioned this past week, what I think they should do is Becky and Charlotte, you really can't punish them, but I think they need to be reminded who the fuck is in charge here and to stop being little spoiled brats. So what I would like to see, since Bianca is a star in the making, she is just wonderful and an amazing performer. We all love her. She seems to have a great attitude. I think that you should really take this Becky and Charlotte situation and use it as a way to really make Bianca. Make yourself a superstar here. You know what I do on Monday Night Raw? I would have Bianca Belair wrestle Becky Lynch and beat her squeaky, sparkle, fucking clean, right in the goddamn middle with the KOD. 1, 2, 3, long 3 count too. 1, 2, 3, crowd explodes. Bianca celebrates. Hell, even empty out the locker room. Lift her up on their shoulders like fucking Brett at WrestleMania 10. Make it a whole thing. Raw goes off the air. Bianca's celebrating. Balloons and confetti is falling. The fans are happy for her. She gets that win back from SummerSlam, and she beats Becky straight up clean. Woman-o, e-woman-o. Then, with Bianca champion, you keep the belt on Charlotte until Survivor Series, and you do Bianca versus Charlotte, champion versus champion, at Survivor Series, and you have Bianca beat Charlotte, squeaky, sparkle fucking clean, right in the middle with the KOD 1, 2, 3. Not for the title, but she, in just a matter of a few weeks, beats Becky and Charlotte completely clean on her own. That is how you launch Bianca. Both women put Bianca over. Maybe it's WWE's way of not punishing, because I'm sure Becky is very, very happy to put Bianca over. She will do it regardless if she's being punished or not. At some point, Becky will drop the belt to Bianca. She has to. She's not going to do... They're not going to do what they did to Bianca at SummerSlam and not pay that off. So I just say if you're going to wait a little while, pay it off now. Pay it off now. That way you don't have to worry about the Becky and Charlotte match at Survivor Series. You got that out of your minds now. Now you got Bianca, and she beats both of them. She's a big star now, and then maybe that humbles Becky and Charlotte a bit. Then right after that, you take the belt off of Charlotte, giving it to Sasha Banks or something, release her ass, and send her to AEW. That's what I would do. Will all of that happen? Of course not, but that's what I would like to see. But in terms of this Monday, Raw sucks so fucking bad. I think WWE should give us a title change on Monday. Put the belt on Bianca. At some point, she's going to have to beat Becky. You got Survivor Series coming up with no championships on the line, and there is no December pay-per-view. So if you are going to have Bianca eventually win back the belt from Becky, when the fuck do you do it? Do you really want to wait until January 1st? Do it now. Do it on TV. Pay-per-views, we always get good shit on pay-per-views. TV matches and TV shows need to be better. They need to give us a reason to actually tune in and watch this stuff. They got a little good when Big E won the title and had the cage match with Lashley and stuff. You need these big-time matches. AEW is very good at it because they don't run 17,000 fucking pay-per-views a year. They're able to do more themed shows. They're able to stack cards for Dynamite on certain weeks with title matches and big things happening. I think WWE needs to try to do more of that. And having a title match, putting Becky and Bianca this week in the main event, putting Bianca over, that's what they need to do. So that's what I'm predicting. So you guys let me know. Am I right or am I wrong? Is my prediction going to be correct or incorrect? What do you think? I also want to briefly touch on this past Tuesday's Halloween Havoc show. Did a rating of 746,000. Pretty good little show. I saw some of it, not all of it. We have a lot of new champions. Toxic Attraction walked away with all the gold. The women, is it JC Jane or Lacey? What the fuck is her name? And the stunningly, ridiculously gorgeous Gigi Dolan won the tag team titles in that ladder match. And we saw that really sick bump by Io Shirai. Just fucking bonkers ass match. And Toxic Attraction is your new tag team champions, are your new tag team champions in the women's division there. We thought that was going to be a spoiler for the world title match when Raquel defended against Mandy Rose. You didn't think that they'd walk away with all the gold, but they did. Dakota Kai showed up dressed as the Grim Reaper, helped Mandy Rose beat Raquel Gonzalez for the title, and the Toxic Attraction is looking a lot like a female version of Undisputed Era there. Whole lot of gold there. Pretty cool. And then in the main event, Tommaso Ciampa actually did successfully retain the title over Braun Breaker, so this might have just been a test for Braun Breaker, either see how he does in a main event situation with a veteran like Ciampa, or make this part of the story. Yes, he's got the future ahead of him. He's going to be a mega star, but he's still a little young and a little inexperienced, and the veteran took advantage of that. He will eventually overcome that, learn from his mistakes, win the title. I think either way, championship gold is in Braun Breaker's future, regardless of how ridiculously fucking stupid his name is. I also want to talk briefly about this past week's Dynamite as well, because we watched that together. It was so fun. I thought it was a great show, and it was kind of a Halloween-themed event. Now, they did dip under 1 million viewers this week, 941,000.40 in the demo. You did have sports on. They have now also moved Dynamite to live on the West Coast. Now, for me, I already watch it at 5 p.m. on the West Coast because the streaming app I use plays it live, but not everywhere does. So that actually could affect the rating a little bit as well. So they dip below 1 million. They probably don't want to be going lower than 1 million too often, though. However, the show was really good. They had a great return match with Serena Deeb and Hikaru Shida, which I thought was amazing, and Shida got that win back, advancing in the tournament in a match that I think Serena and Shida alone was 100 times better than the entire Queen's Crown tournament in WWE. What a match. Moxley versus 10 was hilarious. Moxley came out there and just beat the piss out of the poor kid and left. Now we got Moxley and Cassidy. Next week on Dynamite, the winner faces Danielson at the pay-per-view in the Eliminator Final. That's awesome. And we also had the super fun Halloween match that was the main event with the Dark Order versus the Elite, and the Elite came out dressed as the Ghostbusters. Really interesting tweet from the fellow that does the music in AEW saying that the Ghostbusters I guess was like a last-minute decision. They were going to dress up as something from Squid Game. I don't even know what the fuck Squid Game is. I see everybody talk about it. Is it an actual game or is it a TV show? I don't know what it is, but everybody talks about it. That was going to be what their costumes were going to be like, but I guess the networks didn't want that, so they went with Ghostbusters, and apparently asked the guy that does their music that they need like a Ghostbusters type theme in like 3 hours, and he was able to rush home, get on his computer and create it and get it to him 2 minutes after the show started, which was pretty amazing. And they came out with their proton packs, and then they had the Stay Puft Man, and they had a fucking horse, and then the match is all happening, and something is going to happen with Adam Page. He's going to be somewhere, and they tied up a Cutler and put him in a costume to make it seem like it was Page, so they beat the shit out of him, revealed that it's Cutler, and then Page pulls off the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man shit and goes to town. I thought the whole thing was a lot of fun, and it drew a lot of criticism from fans about like, oh, when WWE does a match, everybody thinks it's stupid, but AEW does it. I'm like, I'm so sick and tired of these like false equivalencies. This is not the same thing. It's the same thing like when the fans claim that WWE's use of Goldberg is the same as AEW's use of Sting. It's not even close to the same thing at all. And neither are these matches. This Halloween match, first of all, you want wrestling to be fun. If you're not watching wrestling to have a good time, then I don't know what the hell you're doing. I didn't find it to be too silly. If AEW ever does something that I think is too silly or weird, I'll say so. But this was like really fun. This wasn't childish. This wasn't stupid, and it served purposes. This is a completely different type of situation than when WWE, this is the tweet I wrote out after Dynamite, I said this is completely different than any time WWE just randomly decorates the outside of the ring to match whatever fucking holiday it is, and then they have some pumpkin patch pickle tickle fight that means nothing, and they're all dumb. You know, they're very, very formulaic. They're very phoned in. They decorate the ring with all this fucking nonsense just to have the stupid match that's just supposed to be fun and goofy for the holiday and is able to entertain third graders. That's really all it is. It is not what we saw on Dynamite. What Dynamite did was very fun, but it wasn't just stupid bullshit nonsense. There was stuff going on. First of all, this actually furthered your pay-per-view main event, world title main event with Paige and Kenny. Also, very subtleties with Kenny Omega and Adam Cole potentially having problems. I think Cole is going to be like eventually kind of like the new leader of the Elite. I think if Kenny loses the belt, there's going to be some drama, dissension there, and I think they might muscle Kenny out, and Cole might be that guy. And the way he lifted his hand up for a tag, and Kenny went to tag him and then psyched him out and tagged a Buck instead, little tiny things, you know, the fans notice this type of stuff, and they're planting little seeds for the future there, so they just didn't give us a dumb match. Everybody go out there, dress like a bunch of idiots, and just flop around and do whatever you want in the ring. No, they actually went out there and furthered stuff with their angles, teased stuff for the future. This match, as kooky as it was, actually did serve a purpose. Yes, it was weird. Yes, it was. Yes, there was a lot of people dressed up looking crazy, but it's fucking Halloween. To me, it's so much different. And then my point was proven. Last night on SmackDown, they aired that Tricker street fight bullshit. It was Nakamura and Boogs against who? Corbin and Moss, I think. It was ridiculous. Fucking ridiculous. I'm like, there you go. Point proven. I rest my case. These are the differences between an AEW-themed holiday-style fun match and what WWE does. It doesn't make it, you know, and I think that's when the fans just get this idea in their head, boy, the fans, you know, they tear apart when WWE does this. All WWE has to do is make one of these good. If they give me a good Halloween match, then I'll say, holy shit, that was a great Halloween match. But it wasn't. It was a shitty Halloween match. Everything they do is shitty. Same thing at Thanksgiving. How many times on Thanksgiving have we seen the Thanksgiving food fight? There's a turkey at ringside. Somebody gets a turkey on their head. How many times have we seen a wrestler with a turkey on their head? More than once, right? So it's just the same shit. They don't put any really fun thought in this. They're really not having that much fun. They're phoning it in. Go out there and throw mashed potatoes at each other. No, let's have some fun with it. Let's have some surprises. Let's take the fans on a ride. WWE doesn't do that with these type of matches, and they proved that here this week. AEW, their two shows had great holiday-themed main events, Dynamite and Rampage last night. Britt Baker and Abaddon nearly killed each other with thumbtacks and all this crazy shit. You know, and here you got Rick Boogs sticking a pumpkin up Madcap Moss's ass. Totally different things. AEW won the Halloween-themed matches by a mile, 10 miles, 100 miles, no comparison whatsoever. I loved what they did on Dynamite. I thought it was fun. And the fans that didn't think it was fun, you need to get hugged. Like I said, I don't want to discuss much of SmackDown last night. I do like that they featured Shotzi a little bit, but a lot of people were pissed off that she turned heel. So Charlotte comes out, cutting a promo. She's joined by Sasha Banks. Then Shotzi comes out on the tank. Shotzi wants a match against Charlotte. Charlotte grants it. They have their match, and Charlotte beats her with natural selection after Sasha, who was at ringside and kind of like coaching on Shotzi, gets up on the apron. Shotzi almost hits her and goes to stop, and that's when Charlotte takes advantage and natural selections her for the win. And then after the match, when Sasha is trying to apologize, Shotzi then attacks her, kicks her ass, and basically turns heel, which I found funny because I didn't even realize that Sasha was a babyface again. I kind of thought she was still a heel. Like, didn't she come back after WrestleMania, pretended to be Bianca's friend, and then backstabbed her and, you know, and all that and kicked her ass? And when did she go babyface again? So if Shotzi, I just thought Shotzi was attacking a heel. So I'm confused. But anyway, I guess Sasha magically is babyface. She got attacked by Shotzi, and now Shotzi is a heel. And a lot of people didn't like that because Shotzi has a very kind of fun babyface type of persona with the, you know, with the tank and the colors and the wow and the wildness and all of that. I don't know if turning her heel was the greatest move. And in the end, I don't think it's going to stick and mean anything. A lot of people were like, great, something for Shotzi to do. Yes, if they actually follow through with this and give her stuff to do, then yeah, maybe it could be great, but I have zero faith in WWE to follow through with anything. I don't trust them to wipe their own asses, much less push Shotzi Blackheart. Also, Adam Pearce is pissed off about what happened to him last week and fined Brock Lesnar $1 million. Hopefully, Adam Pearce is okay with Brock paying him in ribeyes. We also had a fun segment with Kofi and Xavier where Xavier knights Kofi, so that was very nice. Also, great tag match with the New Day defeating the Usos. That was all fun. The Trick or Street fight was fucking stupid, and then that was the end of SmackDown, and that's all I'm going to mention about that FS1 nonsense. But on the other side of that coin, Rampage, wow. What a great match between Danielson and Kingston. That fucking ruled. That's exactly why I love kind of what they're doing right now. And Danielson is full on balls out American Dragon. As American Dragon-y as he's ever been is what he is right now. And you love to see it. They pulverized each other. Danielson, I should say. He's every match that he's in, he's got the ground beef chest, just his welts. I mean, they were just beating the shit out of each other, hitting each other with everything but the kitchen sink. So fun to see Eddie Kingston wrestling these guys, and so fun to see Bryan Danielson wrestling these type of different opponents and just going out there balls out. And he's making a case for Wrestler of the Year, here in just a matter of 6, 7, 8 weeks. Unreal. In the end, Danielson locks in a Hell's Gate submission on Eddie. Eddie winds up just passing out in the hold, and Danielson wins. He now advances in the finals of the Eliminator Tournament to face the winner of Moxley and Cassidy on Wednesday. After the match, he attempts to shake Eddie's hand, but he won't do it. And then they cut backstage to Tony Schiavone, who's interviewing CM Punk. And as CM Punk is talking, you can hear Eddie Kingston making a ruckus in the background. And then he kind of approaches and interrupts CM Punk. And Punk is like, you want to go to sleep again? I saw what happened out there. You want to go to sleep again? And he goes, you know what you're doing? It's unprofessional. I'm disappointed in you. And Eddie's like yelling as he's leaving. So I like the little tease there. That could be fun. And I think it was Divine Ricks who had pointed out earlier at the beginning of the podcast here, you could do a fun tag team match with a heel Moxley and Kingston taking on Danielson and Punk. Holy shit. So you could set that up here. You have Moxley, who I'm assuming is going to beat Orange Cassidy on Dynamite. He'll now go to Full Gear to face Bryan. You could have Kingston interfere in that with Punk making the save. That would be some shit. Imagine that Dynamite tag team main event. Mox and Kingston, Punk and Bryan. It would be like the Blade Runners reuniting on Nitro when they teamed up Sting and Warrior for like one night on Nitro, just to see Danielson and Punk. It's crazy, fucking crazy. I would absolutely love to see that. Great little match too, with Dante Martin defeating Matt Sydal. Loved that. And then the Trick or Street street fight that AEW had. I think Rampage and SmackDown's match had the same name, Trick or Street Fight or some shit like that. But in this case, Britt Baker and Abaddon was so much more fun because it was really like a spooky type of match. It was Falls Count Anywhere, and Abaddon is a Halloween character just on her own any time of year. And this was a pretty fun little outing and a fun match to watch Britt Baker in. She likes doing these hardcore style matches. They had trouble getting the table to break, swinging neck breaker off the apron to Abaddon. Table doesn't break. Then a suplex onto the same table, which won't break. Abaddon busted out the thumbtacks and slams Britt Baker on them, for a near fall. The finish was just hilariously great here. So Britt regains control. She winds up putting Abaddon's head in the chair, Pillmanizing basically Abaddon's head, and then stomps in it. And it looked so gnarly. It looked like she really broke her neck in half, but Abaddon completely no-sold it. So you're worried that she's not all right. She goes, oh my God, I hope she's okay. And then she bounces right back up like fucking Undertaker. And then Britt takes a handful of thumbtacks, puts them in Abaddon's mouth, and then super kicks her right in the face, and then gets her down for the lockjaw. She's got her pinned down, and she's going to put her hands in Abaddon's mouth, but Abaddon is into it. She's opening her mouth. He's like, ah. She's trying to chomp the fingers. And so Britt thinks better of it. And then Abaddon grabs her hand and tries to force her hand in her mouth. Imagine someone doing that to Mankind back in the day. That was great. So finally, because this is a no disqualification, anything goes match, Jamie Hayter and Rebel, who are both out there, get in the ring. I think Hayter comes in the ring. Rebel gets up on the apron. Hayter blasts Abaddon while Rebel distracts the official, even though there's no reason to distract the official. And Britt is able to roll up Abaddon for the 1-2-3 and get the win and survive a very, very scary encounter for Britt Baker. So that was fun. It was bloody. It was gory. It was crazy, and loved that main event. So when you look at Halloween-themed matches for the week, AEW wins in a landslide. Next week for Rampage, we've got John Silver versus Adam Cole, Velvet and Bunny, and in the TBS tournament match. I think that's all we have advertised so far for next week's Rampage. Yeah, Red Velvet, Bunny, TBS tournament, Silver and Cole. That's what we got. So that was your Rampage and SmackDown from last night, and I think we touched on all of the wrestling results and stuff for the week. We want to finish things up here today with my brief review, or actually not too brief, but I want to give a detailed review on the season finale of Dark Side of the Ring Steroid Trials. This was big. Season 3 has wrapped up, and the Steroid Trials aired on Thursday night on Vice, and I got a chance to watch it last night, and it was pretty crazy to reminisce about a lot of this stuff and how crazy of a time this was and everything going on. So we'll talk about that in 1 second. Let me cruise back over here to the chat, bust out super chats that are rolling in, and ask you guys to keep hitting that thumbs up button for me if you don't mind. If you're not subscribed to me, make sure you do that as well. And I also want to make sure I don't miss any super chats this time, because I think I missed a few last week. Spaz Phoenix, what's up, dude? Thank you for that $2 earlier on. Nice to see Shotzi and Baszler getting shine. Yeah, I didn't mention Baszler as well. She had that match with Naomi with Sonya as the ref. That was good. I hope Baszler gets more, and I hope Shotzi gets more, but so far a lot of people seem bummed out that she turned heel. I really, at the end of the day, don't care, because I don't think anything they do sticks. But just being featured, spotlighted, is something that's kind of rare, and Shotzi got that last night, so at least that's a plus. Yeah, Seth and Big E could be Divine Ricks, and there's $5 from you, man. Thank you again for that. I wonder who will give Punk and Danielson their first loss. Yeah, both haven't lost yet. I don't know. That's something to think about. I think maybe it might be one of their first title matches or something like that. Maybe is where a loss comes. We'll see. Yeah, I like the idea of Punk and Danielson potentially, doing some stuff together if they have formed some sort of a mutual issue against Moxley and Kingston. Could be interesting. Zelius Ward is back. Thank you so much for the $5. I appreciate it. Do you think CM Punk should be feuding with bigger names instead of newer talent? Yes and no. We've talked a lot about this. I would like to see Punk do more, because I think he is a big name. The way he came in the whole wrestling world, he's the most recognizable name, it seems like, almost, because everywhere you go, they're chanting his name, and it's Punk, 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 Punk. So you knew whenever he turned back up in wrestling, it was going to be a huge deal. But part of me also, though, likes and appreciates the story of him admitting that a lot of time has passed, and he's old now, and he's getting his legs back, and he's slowly getting back in the groove. You're not just going to come right back in and challenge the world champion right off the bat after a 7-year absence. So I like the fact that he's working with other guys, but at the same time, at some point, people need to look around and realize that he's still CM Punk, and you need to get him doing some juicy shit. I think it'll come. And with the fans too, if he were to be thrust right into the title picture, the same fans that are complaining about him starting off slow would be saying he's starting too fast. I guarantee they would say that. So who's to say which is the right way to do it, But so far, I'm still okay with it. But yeah, soon I'm ready for Punk to do some major stuff. Steve and Scott, thanks for the $5, man. I appreciate it. Good mic work. I know this won't happen, but it would be fun if Charlotte took one of those women's titles to AEW and pulled a Ric Flair in 1991. You're right. It won't happen, but it would be amazing if it did. It's come close. I mean, Flair brought the NWA title to WWE. Alundra Blaze or Medusa brought the WWF women's title to Nitro. It's possible, but no, I don't think you can. But funny thing is, I don't like the legalities of that. Like, WWE was never able to sue or anything. I don't think they have any litigation over what Medusa did, unless it was WWE's actual property and they needed to get that back. But who's to say that Charlotte can't just go there? Don't worry about taking one of the titles. Just get a replica. Anybody can buy a WWE title. So she can just buy a replica and then drop the replica in the trash. Would she be allowed to do that? I don't know. I don't know if you can take a replica WWE title on AEW TV and drop it in the trash. I would assume you can. I don't think there's any law against that. So if Charlotte did it, oh man. But one thing you got to remember about Charlotte, if for any reason she does go to AEW, I don't think that she will, it's going to take a lot of cooperation from WWE. They're going to have to allow her to go. I don't think they're going to do that. And if they do that and they allow her to leave and they let her out of this contract, they're going to have something in place where she's not going to be allowed to go over there and do any trashing of them. So, and why would she? Nobody's been treated better ever. The only reason at this point Charlotte would go to AEW is to be closer to her fiance, possibly her dad if Rick turns up there in any capacity, or if, you know, just the heat is too strong in WWE, she wants to get out of there for a while. It's the only reason. That's the only way I see it happening, and honestly, I don't really see it happening at all. I don't think Charlotte is going anywhere, unfortunately. All right, I think that knocks out the table was going into business for itself. That table no-sold worse than Abaddon did. Fun stuff. Anyway, okay, well, let's get into now the final subject that we're going to talk about today, and that is the steroid trial Vice's Dark Side of the Ring. Season 3 finale aired on Thursday, chronicling the WWE steroid trials from 1992 through 1994 and the investigations and everything that was surrounding that. And it was a really interesting documentary, to say the least. Now, what I loved about this the most is just seeing Jerry McDevitt in action, hearing him talk. I've seen clips of him only throughout the years, like, you know, the Owen stuff, the Benoit stuff. I've seen clips of him on TV. I've heard him speak sentences, but I've never just seen him featured this much. And what a fucking, this guy is just an unstoppable monster. We've heard so many stories about this unbeatable Jerry McDevitt. There's been very few times when WWE has come out on the losing end with McDevitt heading things up. I think only a couple of times. They got burned a bit in the WWF Wildlife Fund deal because they were dealing with the steroid trial. And I think, you know, Punk... I think maybe Punk got one over on them as well with that defamation lawsuit or whatever was going on there. But otherwise, McDevitt's pretty unstoppable. So they open up the documentary with Jerry McDevitt talking about his history with WWE and Vince McMahon. Lots of pictures from his office of him and Vince and him and the family. He talked about his history with the company. He's been representing them for 30 plus years. Talks about being present at the Owen Hart, stuff and the Chris Benoit stuff. He was doing media appearances and handling any court proceedings that needed to happen there. Pictures of Vince and Jerry with a WWE belt, etc. All that stuff basically just highlighting his history with Vince, the McMahons, and the WWE. Interviewed in this documentary, pretty interesting group of names here. We had Jerry McDevitt, of course, who was basically the star of this entire documentary. Also Dave Meltzer, who was a very big part of the steroid trial and covered that, along with Wade Keller. Jim Ross popped up a couple times in this. So did John Arezzi, who had the Pro Wrestling Spotlight show back in the day. We had Warlord, B. Brian Blair, and, of course, Phil Mushnick. I have not seen this fucking bastard's face in so long, but he was a huge thorn in WWE's side for so long. And he still, you can tell, he just still holds so much of a grudge. And my God, I'd love to see Vince and him duke it out one day. That would be fun shit. And of course, the whole thing, as usual, was narrated by Chris Jericho. So one of the first things they did was establish how truly smart Jerry McDevitt is. Jim Ross and a lot of others talked about, what a great attorney he was and how just ruthless and smart and intelligent he was. And these are all things that we've heard about this guy before. I mean, he's gotten WWE out of some pretty tight jams, and that's what Jim Ross said. He goes, Jerry McDevitt is the guy that you're going to hire to save your ass. So admitting that WWE's ass has needed saving a time or two by Jerry McDevitt. So the first thing they start talking about is Dr. George Zahorian. Now, George Zahorian was the ringside physician for the Pennsylvania Athletic Commission and would work all of the WWE events when they would run the Allentown TV tapings. Now, WWE would routinely run tapings in Allentown back in the day, in the early 70s and early 80s and stuff. That's where all that shit would be going down. So he would be there, present at all those TV tapings to examine the wrestlers and determine if they're fit to go in the ring or not, take their blood pressure and whatnot. And as Warlord, kind of laid out here, once he would check you out and get you ready to go in the ring, he would ask you if there is anything you need. And if there's something you need that he doesn't have, he can get it and he'll mail it to you. So basically, he had lines of wrestlers every week at these TV tapings coming up to get their candy, as it was called, and picking up their steroids, picking up their somas, their pain medicine, whatever they needed. This guy could get and get to them for the price. So he was basically just a drug dealer at the live events. So in 1990, because of the crackdown on steroids and some of these investigations and this chatter and this speculation and talking, steroids became a controlled substance, which means it was like, trafficking cocaine or heroin or anything like that. So it became a big deal in 1990, and that's when the FBI started looking into some of George Zahorian's business dealings, and they targeted this guy named Bill Dunn, who was a weightlifting coach who was basically getting steroids from George Zahorian and then supplying them to teenagers or something like that. So the FBI targets Bill Dunn. They end up catching him ordering all this stuff, and they get him to roll over on George and turn state witness on him. He wore a wire. We even heard recordings of that conversation between Dunn and Zahorian, where Zahorian is saying, look, it's cash or carry. As long as you've got the cash, I've got it. He wasn't sounding much like a doctor, and he was sounding a lot like a drug dealer. And apparently part of that conversation, he admitted to distributing these steroids to kids. So they were able to kind of get Zahorian now, and they've arrested him, and they're sending him to trial. So WWE gets wind of this, and they attempt to distance themselves from the doctor. But this guy is, he's in tight with Vince McMahon. He's been interviewed by him before. He's got pictures with Vince and all of this stuff. So WWE knows that there's a problem now, and they're trying to distance themselves from this doctor. And that's when the investigation, when they're investigating Zahorian and tearing up his office and shit, they just find a paper trail and all sorts of evidence that just leads them right to the doors of WWE. Now, Brian Blair, he's one half of the Killer Bees, he's interviewed for this, and he says that one day the FBI showed up at his doorstep saying that they knew that he received 3 FedEx packages, and they knew what was in the packages because they intercepted them, opened them, documented them, took photos of them, and they know about it. So they basically, asked him, we'll give you a break if you just let us know who your supplier is. So they're getting guys to pretty much tell on each other. And when they uncover all of Zahorian's records, they see a lot of packages being delivered to a very recognizable name named Terry Bollea. So that really put the heat now on WWE. And mostly Zahorian with his association to them. Now, what's interesting about this is they've got George Zahorian on trial. They're going to get him. He's going to spend a few years in jail, and they want to bring Hogan in to testify against him or whatever. So McDivitt, I guess, he's able to get Hogan removed from the case because when Hogan was getting steroids from George Zahorian, apparently there were discussions because he was a doctor about having kids with his wife and fathering children and things like that. And McDivitt had argued that since, these conversations, this is why he went to the doctor in the first place. It's going to be a violation of confidentiality and shit like that if he testifies, and you're going to make him a victim when he didn't do anything wrong, and convinces the judge to say that Hogan does not have to testify in this. And it really helped save Hulk Hogan's kind of reputation, because it would have ruined him if he would have had to go under oath and do stuff. But then, and this is a funny line here. So basically, McDivitt says that he goes, President Ronald Reagan had to testify in the Oliver North trial even when he didn't want to. And he's like, how did the president not get out of testifying, but Hulk Hogan was able to? And McDivitt says, maybe Reagan had the wrong lawyer. Fucking popped. This guy is hilarious. I don't know why I'm all of a sudden just a huge Jerry McDivitt fan, even though probably deep down he's a sleazeball. So due to the George Zahorian stuff and everything that was going on with that doctor, WWE basically had to come clean on a few things. So Vince holds the presser at the Plaza Hotel on the same day that Hulk Hogan goes and appears on the Arsenio Hall show. And Arsenio brings up the controversy, and Hogan, and I remember when this happened too, because it really hurt Hulk Hogan and it kind of pissed Vince McMahon off. Hogan, I don't even know why he went on this show when all this was going down. If I was him, I wouldn't be doing any sort of media at all. But he basically goes through this long, drawn-out explanation, half admitting wrongdoing while the other half trying to remain innocent. And it reminded me a lot of? It reminded me of Tom Brady when he was trying to explain away Deflategate. And Tom Brady's just insane, best of all time, no doubt. But man, did I lose a ton of respect for him during that Deflategate bullshit because it was so dumb. And if they just would have admitted it, it wouldn't have been that big a deal. I remember the game that they got caught deflating the balls. They won like 41-3 or something. I'm like, you guys are already the best team in the world. You don't need an extra edge. Even if you didn't deflate any balls, you would have beat them anyway. But you did it anyway. Why'd you do it? And to hear Tom Brady have that press conference and how many times he said the word balls and how he likes the balls and the firmness of the balls and how the balls feel in his hand. He was so full of shit. And I've never watched somebody that's like, how in the world can this person believe that one single human watching this believes anything he said? Because nobody does. And that's what Hogan's reminded me of here. He's just trying so hard to kind of whitewash over this and explain and not admit to too much. And in the end, he wound up looking really bad because the public did not buy it at all. Everybody knew that he was full of shit. And Vince, I guess, wasn't too happy about it either because it made them look bad. And then Vince goes on the Donahue show, something that I still cannot believe happened. To this day, it has to be seen to be believed. I've never seen Vince on the Donahue show from back in the early 90s. He's there with Meltzer and Barry O. This was either the same one that Bruno was on or there was two. Because they also did one about the sex scandal with Bruno Sammartino and Barry O. On this panel, it was Vince, Meltzer, John Arezzi, Barry O was there, and a few others. So I can't remember if these are two different shows or if this is all encompassed in the same one. But when that went down, Vince and Meltzer are sitting right next to each other, and Meltzer's got that fucking exquisite mullet. And right there on the Donahue show, Arezzi says that he caught Vince in a lie about Hogan's appearance on the Arsenio Hall show, when, Vince said he was devastated to learn that Hogan took steroids. And then Vince is like, I never said that. And then Meltzer chimes in. He's like, yeah, you did. You told me. And you could see that Vince was just like infuriated. So they showed a lot of footage from that Donahue show, which was crazy. And now Arezzi claims because of that and the look that Vince McMahon gave him, that Vince never liked him. And that one day he had a knock on his door. He wasn't home, but his mom was home. So either his mom lived with him or he lived with his mom, either way. And two guys were at the front door and they told his mom, say, hey, tell your son that he's living in a dangerous neighborhood. And McDivitt hilariously responds to this in the documentary and says, he's just making that shit up. No one cared. No one would care enough about John Arezzi to send two black suit guys to his door to threaten him. Like, that would never happen. So you don't know who's telling the truth here, but it's funny just to hear McDivitt just brush this shit off. Fuck that guy. He's not worth beating up. I kind of thought that was funny. Enter Phil Mushnick. Now, we know that Phil Mushnick was writing posts in the New York Times for years about WWE targeting them. He really seemed to have this personal vendetta against WWE. And even if some of what he said was true about the company, what made me so mad is, like, as a fan, as a younger fan back in the day, I felt like he was fucking with a form of entertainment that I really enjoy. Now I don't give a shit who goes after WWE, but back then I was really into what they were doing and I didn't want to see anything happen. So this motherfucker is, I felt like he was attacking wrestling fans as well. Jim Cornette famously went off on Mushnick on Raw that time when Mushnick wrote a column about Brian Pillman. The guy's such a fucking son of a bitch too, but in the end, I mean, a lot of what he says, he has a gripe, WWE is corrupt and fucked up as hell. But this guy had such, just malice and evil intentions, I think, to where he was, WWE, I'm sure, has done plenty of bad, but what he was trying to do was going to affect the lives of a lot of people if he were to be successful. So I didn't find that to be very cool. Never really liked Phil Mushnick at all. So he starts writing all these posts talking about the Zahorian trial and, how the fuck did Hogan get taken off, not being called to testify, and how he got out of this shit, and basically trying to dredge up all of these, accusations again. And that gets the attention of the Eastern District of New York, who begins a brand new investigation. So now they know they're going to be investigated again by the government. And so the WWE basically pivots. And around this time was when they went with the smaller wrestlers. That's when Brett won the title. Flair was champion, and then Brett took the title. Shawn Michaels, started getting on the map, and they basically were just going in a little bit different of a direction, even though you wouldn't know it. The following year, still in the middle of all these allegations, they've got the WBF, and they've got Lex Luger as like a born-again Hogan starting in 1993 during all of this. But still, overall, looked like they were going younger, and they were going smaller around this time. So finally, after 18 months of investigation, Vince McMahon is finally indicted. WWE's finally brought up on these charges, and they were going to be going to trial. And McDevitt tells a story about how they were in a restaurant or something, and it came on the news, and they were actually happy because they've been had to sit there with their thumbs up their asses, letting these people investigate them for a year and a half without being able to do anything about it. And now McDevitt was like, now finally we get a chance to, go to trial and put this thing to bed once and for all. They talk about the neck brace, which was funny. So I think some of the early days, maybe the arraignment or something, the pre-trial stuff, Vince McMahon showed up in a neck brace and everybody was thinking he was doing it for sympathy. But no, he really got the surgery. I even remember they ran an angle on TV to explain it. Vince, it was when Flair first came in, and Piper was on commentary with Vince, like on Superstars one week. And then Flair approached the commentary booth and got in Piper's face. The two start getting into a scuffle, and Piper picks up like a wooden chair and swings at Flair, but he misses and hits Vince instead. Vince taking a bump in like 1992 or whatever it was. He goes down, and that was a way to kind of get Vince off TV to, number one, do the steroid trial shit, but also, number two, get the neck surgery. So he showed up and in the courtroom with a neck brace on, which is just a funny visual. So turns out the WWE actually has to have two lawyers because McDevitt's previous involvement with the George Zahorian case and some of the wrestlers like Hogan is perceived as a conflict of interest. So WWE, what they did was they brought in this woman named Laura Bravetti to represent Vince while McDevitt can continue representing WWE. So they basically had two attorneys now. And it's funny when they tell the story of this, how badly the federal government botched this entire investigation. They looked like a bunch of chumps in this, and it's pretty fucking hilarious to look at because now with two lawyers, as McDevitt pointed out, they get to have double openings, they get to have double closings, and it was just a really dumb move on the government's part to try to knock McDevitt off the case and get him off, the entire trial. Backfired. Now they got two attorneys to deal with, which I loved. So I guess Warlord, Ultimate Warrior, Rick Rude, and I think Hulk Hogan all took the stand, and no one really directly implicated Vince. Now, we'll talk about Hogan in a minute, but everybody else, like Warlord said, he goes, I took steroids, but I didn't even buy them from Zahorian because I could get them cheaper somewhere else. So basically everybody was like, yeah, we all took steroids. Nobody's debating that steroids were taken, but Vince McMahon did not partake in any sort of conspiracy. He never forced us to take anything. We took it on our own. Everybody said the same thing. Now, the best part of this whole thing was when Nails was called to the stand, our old buddy Nails. Now, everybody, they didn't even mention this in the documentary, but for those who don't know, Nails actually physically assaulted Vince McMahon backstage at a show once, choked him out, and he was fired over money or something. So they bring Nails to the stand to testify, and because he's got this vendetta and beef with Vince McMahon, he just fucking lies right there on under oath and says that Vince McMahon told him to get on steroids, say you must get on steroids. And what was funny about this is that Nails' character wore the orange jumpsuit. He was like an escaped convict. He wore that orange jumpsuit. There's no reason for him to develop any muscles based on his look. And this is right in smack dab in the middle of the investigation. So Nails is trying to stick it to Vince by making it seem like Vince, forced him to take steroids, and he was immediately shut down in cross-examination. Like, what do you mean he asked you to take steroids? You're wearing a jumpsuit. Why would you need to take steroids? And he's in the middle of an investigation right now. Everybody that's come on the stand prior to you has said that Vince did not tell them that they had to take steroids, and now all of a sudden here you come and say that he did. Do you have any animosity towards Vince McMahon? And Nails says no. And then they said, Your Honor, Mr. Wachholtz or whatever his name is, doesn't know what the word animosity means. And then they say, do you hate Vince? And he goes, yes. So the fact that Nails did not even know what animosity means is great. Oh, these fucking idiots, man. They are just, each witness that was brought to testify damaged the prosecution. By the way, every witness that was called to testify was called by the prosecution. Defense called 0 witnesses. Vince never took the stand, and they never called anybody. They just let the federal government shoot themselves in the foot. Hilarious story to watch this shit unfold. So anyway, then they bring in George Zahorian from his prison cell. And again, there's a whole controversy there, something about a letter that he wrote. They were moving him around from prison to prison, leaning on him, trying to get him to say certain things. They were really seemed like to be out for Vince McMahon's blood here. And when they eventually get him on the stand, again, he doesn't implicate what the feds are trying to imply here. They're basically they're building their case on the fact that Vince McMahon conspired to distribute steroids and he was a drug dealer and he forced his wrestlers to take them and all of this shit. And every one of these wrestlers, one at a time, was like, no. And then George Zahorian, the one guy who can be the most damaging of all of this, he basically says that, Vince, he did tell Vince that he was selling the wrestler steroids and Vince didn't stop him. So again, it's not good. And it does admit that Vince did have some steroids running through his company, but it was not, he was not guilty of what the government was saying he was. And that was conspiracy and shit. It wasn't the case. So McDivitt and the lawyers are feeling pretty good about this. Now, it got a little murky here at the end. A lot of little extra stuff that really factored into the verdict here. Now, Vince's assistant, her name was Emily Feinberg. She had a lot of personal knowledge of Vince and his steroid use, and she had claimed that she was asked to personally deliver steroids to Hulk Hogan while they were in New York at like Madison Square Garden or Nassau Coliseum or something. And here's where it gets interesting. So Laura Bravetti, the other lawyer that was brought in to represent Vince because McDivitt couldn't because conflict of interest, she had basically like a secret husband who was, I guess he was presenting himself as someone in the media, and he was talking to people like Meltzer. And Meltzer said, it was crazy when Laura Bravetti was cross-examining Emily, Vince's assistant, Emily Feinberg. It's like Bravetti knew everything that she was going to say. Like she had an answer for everything. It was like it was ESP. And he goes, and I didn't think anything of it until the story comes out about how Laura Bravetti's husband apparently was calling everybody, claiming to be from 60 Minutes, like he told Phil Mushnick, or somewhere in the media, and trying to get as much information as he could and try to basically get info to pass along to his wife. So he calls this Emily Feinberg and starts talking about book deals and basically just grilling her for as much information as he could, trying to find out what she knows, saying, hey, when all this is over, why don't you just tell me what you got? And I'll say, maybe we can put together a book deal or something. She gives him all of this information. He then passes it along to his wife, who now she knows, how to really cross and examine this witness. So McDivitt and Vince both are pissed that there's these claims of evidence tampering, and because it was perceived to be desperation on the government's part. They know they're losing. They know they're getting their ass kicked. So now they're trying to create these other things, and McDivitt was pissed. Vince made a statement, a video statement from the WWE studios, where he's just trashing the government, saying they are going after, Bravetti and her husband and all this stuff and making themselves look like the victim. So every step that the federal government made them and their case look worse, which is pretty funny. Now, another thing that Phil Mushnick pointed out is that another big mistake that they made was indicting Vince and WWE in New York instead of in Stamford, where all of the paper trail was. And that had a big thing to do with it. So it was just terribly botched by the government from basically the word go. If they wanted to put Vince away, they probably could. So Emily Feinberg, she's on the stand, and of course Laura Bravetti has an answer for everything, and Emily is the one who had the story about Vince told her to deliver steroids to Hogan at Madison Square Garden or Nassau. So McDivitt Bravetti was like, okay, when did you get these drugs? Oh, you got them on this date? Okay, well, they were nowhere near MSG or Nassau Coliseum on any of these days. So basically, they eliminate her as any sort of a damaging witness. So there's really nobody else left other than Hulk Hogan. And the timing of this was really interesting because Hulk Hogan literally days before had just signed with WCW. He had left WWE. Now he was doing the Thunder in Paradise stuff. This was, early mid-94, and he was signing on with WCW. And I'm pretty sure the Sunday after he testified was the pay-per-view where he won the title from Ric Flair. It was like that close. All this shit was happening all at the same time. I think King of the Ring 94 when Owen won was happening right around this time as well. So Hogan is called now to the stand. He's agreed, or they've agreed to grant him immunity for anything that he reveals here in the trial. So He's basically their star witness. And he goes on the stand to basically say that him and Vince, he just told the truth. We're gym buddies. I've taken steroids. Vince has taken steroids. I've given Vince some of mine. He's given me some of his. But I was never a part of any conspiracy. There was never anything going on in WWE that would force us to take steroids. Basically, everything that you're claiming Vince is doing is wrong. If you want to come up here and accuse him of taking steroids and knowing that his wrestlers took steroids, yes, he's guilty of that. But conspiring and all this shit, no. And their star witness basically proved the defense, the defense's case, and made him look really shitty. And it was pretty funny because they showed footage of Hogan leaving the courtroom that day, and he's getting in the limo, and they're like, oh, do you have anything to say? And he goes, yeah, buy the pay-per-view on Sunday. So I think the pay-per-view was like that Sunday. Now, apparently because of this, like, Vince was still mad. Like, Hogan is the reason that Vince didn't go to jail for 17 years. He would have gotten out of jail in 2011. Vince McMahon would have only been out of jail, like, for 10 years had he gone down there. And for some reason, there was still just a lot of bad blood between him and Hogan. Maybe he was upset that Hogan went to WCW, and maybe he was still, bitter about the way Hogan handled the Arsenio Hall show or whatever. But Vince should have been pretty fucking grateful. But it had to be weird. I remember reading into the magazines and hearing about the story at the time. To think about the head of WWE, sitting in the same room from a guy who's going to win the WCW title in just a couple of days was pretty fucking crazy. They talk about the very passionate closing argument by Sean O'Shea, who was a leading prosecutor for the federal government, and how he was just desperate and so pissed off knowing that they got their asses kicked in this whole thing. And he's just berating Vince, and he's doing things that most judges wouldn't allow in terms of just being really over the top and passionate in your closing argument, to the point where McDivitt says that Stephanie McMahon ran out of the courtroom crying, and he had to go console her, and he felt so bad for her. Fuck Stephanie. Like, I give a shit if Stephanie's upset. Remember what she said in that 9/11 show? I had my own personal 9/11 when the government came after my dad. Fuck you, Stephanie. So I have zero sympathy for Stephanie at all. But he talked about a crying Stephanie in the courtroom. And then the verdict comes in. And they read the verdict for Vince McMahon first, and it comes out not guilty. So McDivitt thinks, okay, they're going to let Vince off, but they're going to hit WWE with some bogus charge. But they don't. Not guilty for WWE as well. And the verdict drew applause from the courtroom. Even some of the jury was applauding. Basically, the jury was not convinced at all at anything the federal government was presenting to them. And all Vince and WWE had to do was just sit there and talk to the prosecution's witnesses and just discredit their entire story. And it was fucking hilarious. And Vince walks away a free man. McDivitt says they went to dinner later on that night, and he joked to Vince in a joking manner, hey, you can take that neck brace off now. And Vince does, rips it off and waves it around in the air. So it was a pretty good episode. And I thought it was interesting that this Dark Side of the Ring, this made WWE look like the baby faces, because McDivitt has got, he knows what to say and the right things to say, and he painted a picture very, very pro WWE in this. But still, it was a fun episode. Season 3 this year was pretty good. I hope they do a season 4. There's lots of possible subjects they could discuss. And I'm ready for that whenever it goes down. But very long and a very fun Season 3 of Dark Side of the Ring. And there you go, the Steroid Trials, and that is a wrap. Time for Season 4. Anywho, I need to get out of here because I need to head to work soon. But let me just see if there's any other things I need to say in the chat. Steven Scott, I got your super chat from earlier on. Before you guys are leaving, be sure to smash that thumbs up button for me. I would really, really, really appreciate it. Nails could be a Dark Side of the Ring. Maybe. He was so terrible. Just reading some of these comments from earlier. Yeah, so the steroid trial was fun. I just love that stuff because I was right in the middle of it at that time. I mean, I was in high school, during the steroid investigation and the verdict for the steroid trial. And I remember all of that. And I remember how weird 1994 was, and just a weird year, in general. So, crazy times. But anyway, I got to get out of here now. I got a big night ahead of me. I'm not going Going to be back until tomorrow night. The audio to this should be up on the website for download and on the podcast sites here in just a little bit, so keep a lookout for that. And make sure you're back here tomorrow night. If you got nothing to do for Halloween, we're going to be up here 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We're going to watch Halloween Havoc 1995 together. We're going to watch the Giant get thrown off the roof and come back to life. And the Yeti dry hump Hulk Hogan. It should be a kick-ass fucking time. You guys have a great rest of your Saturday. Have a great rest of your night. If you're going out partying for Halloween, be fun, be safe, have a great time. Catch you tomorrow night.